ខេត្តតាកែវតាមបណ្ដោយផ្លូវជាតិលេខ 2 ឆ្ពោះទៅកាន់វត្តឋានសង្កាត់ទន្លេបាសាក់ខណ្ឌចំការមករាជធានីភ្នំពេញដើម្បីស្នាក់អាស្រ័យលុះស្អែកឡើងថ្ងៃទី 10 ធ្នូក្បួនធម្មយាត្រានេះនឹងជួបជុំគ្នានៅមុខមន្ទីររដ្ឋសភាដើម្បីប្រារព្ធទិវាសិទ្ធិមនុស្ស 10 ធ្នូជាមួយក្បួនធម្មយាត្រាមកពីតាមបណ្ដាខេត្តផ្សេងៗទៀតសកម្មភាពបន្តិចបន្តួចរាំងផ្លាស់នៅចិត្តអង្គអាក្រាហានរបស់វរៈជនខ្មែរបានទេបងប្អូនមើលនេះដោយសារប្រជាពលរដ្ឋទាំងអស់គ្នាយើងលះបង់សេចក្តីសុខដល់តូចតខ្លួនយើងនេះដើម្បីសេចក្តីសុខរបស់ប្រជាពលរដ្ឋទូទាំងប្រទេសមែនទេបងប្អូនយើងលះបង់សេចក្តីសុខនៅក្នុងការដើរគណៈធម្មយាត្រានិងសទ្ធិយាត្រាតែបន្តិចបន្តួចតែប្រហែលថ្ងៃទេប៉ុន្តែយើងអាចផ្សព្វផ្សាយអំពីសិទ្ធិមនុស្សឲ្យបងប្អូនប្រជាពលរដ្ឋខ្មែរបានយល់បានដឹងហើយនឹងបានស្គាល់អំពីសិទ្ធិមនុស្សឈ្មោះតែយើងបានធ្វើសេចក្តីល្អបានចែកនៅសេចក្តីល្អឲ្យបងប្អូនប្រជាពលរដ្ឋខ្មែរយើងបានដឹងទាំងអស់គ្នាឲ្យគាត់គោរពសិទ្ធិមនុស្សទាំងអស់គ្នាប៉ុន្តែជាអកុសលពេលនេះអ្នកកាន់ច្បាប់រំលោភលើច្បាប់រំលោភលើសិទ្ធិមនុស្សឲ្យបងប្អូនមែនអត់បងប្អូនជនជាតិភាគតិចមានបាត់បង់ដៃអត់បាត់បង់ដៃអត់អរការរំលោភបំពានលើសិទ្ធិអត់រំលោភបំពានលើសិទ្ធិអត់
មូលហេតុអីបានលោកមកចូលរួមហើយធម្មយាត្រានេះបាទ
ចូលរួមចង់បានសិទ្ធិសេរីភាពដូចគេដែរគាត់ចង់បានដេតលីដើម្បីឲ្យក្រុមហ៊ុនរំលោភវិយោគអស់ពីប្រជាពលរដ្ឋជំនឿច្រើនពួកខ្ញុំ
ក្រុមហ៊ុនអាកាសចរបរទេសប្រើឈ្មោះបេតិកភណ្ឌខ្មែរលោកអ្នកនាងជាទីមេត្រីនៅថ្ងៃនេះនៅលើទំព័រ Facebook ផ្ទាល់ខ្លួនរបស់លោកសំរងស៊ីប្រធានគណៈបក្សសង្គ្រោះជាតិបានចុះផ្សាយអត្ថបទមួយបង្ហាញអំពីក្រុមហ៊ុនអាកាសចរបរទេសមួយចំនួនដែលយកឈ្មោះទឹកដីឬបេតិកភណ្ឌរបស់ខ្មែរយកមកធ្វើជាអាជីវកម្មចំណេញលុយលើខ្នងប្រជារាស្ត្រខ្មែរតាមរយៈអត្ថបទដែលបានភ្ជាប់ដោយរូបថតបានបង្ហាញថាយន្តហោះនៃក្រុមហ៊ុនអាកាសចររបស់ថៃដែលមានឈ្មោះថា Bangkok Air ក៏បានប្រើឈ្មោះអង្គរវត្តជាបេតិកភណ្ឌរបស់ខ្មែរដើម្បីទាក់ទាញភ្ញៀវទេសចរចំណែកឯយន្តហោះនៃក្រុមហ៊ុនអាកាសចរវៀតណាមឈ្មោះ New Vietnam Airlines គឺកំពុងតែរកស៊ីលើទឹកដីនៃប្រទេសកម្ពុជាដែលដឹកជញ្ជូនភ្ញៀវទេសចរពីខេត្តសៀមរាបទៅកាន់កោះត្រល់ដែលយួនបានបដូរឈ្មោះទៅជាកោះភូគុកប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាទាបជាងប្រទេសជិតខាងគួរឲ្យព្រួយបារម្ភលោកអ្នកនាងជាទីមេត្រីតាមទូលលេខនៃអង្គការពលកម្មអន្តរជាតិ ILO បានបង្ហាញថាប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាទាបជាងនៅប្រទេសដទៃឆ្ងាយណាស់សូម្បីតែប្រទេសវៀតណាមដែលនៅជាប់ប្រទេសកម្ពុជាប៉ុន្តែទំនិញប្រើប្រាស់ប្រចាំថ្ងៃនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាដូចជាប្រេងសាំងថ្លៃជាងនៅប្រទេសដទៃនៅក្នុងតារាងប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមចន្លោះពីឆ្នាំ2011ដល់ឆ្នាំ2013បានបង្ហាញថាប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាគឺ$121សហរដ្ឋអាមេរិកចំណែកឯប្រទេសវៀតណាមប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមគឺ$181
ដូច្នេះប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសវៀតណាមច្រើនជាងប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាចំនួន$60 ចំណែកប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសថៃគឺ$357 ដូច្នេះប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសថៃច្រើនជាងប្រាក់ខែជាមធ្យមនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាចំនួន$236 ដីសម្បត្តិនៅកម្ពុជាស្ទើរទាំងអស់ប៉ះពាល់នឹងធ្វើឲ្យពលរដ្ឋកាន់តែក្របើយោងតាមការចុះផ្សាយរបស់គេហទំព័រភ្នំពេញប៉ុស្តិ៍បានចុះផ្សាយថាសម្បត្តិដីសេដ្ឋកិច្ចនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាស្ទើរតែ100%ពាក់ព័ន្ធនឹងអចលនទ្រព្យដែលមានម្ចាស់កាន់កាប់ឬមានអ្នកស្រុករស់នៅដោយមិនមានការសួរនាំឬការពិគ្រោះយោបល់ហើយត្រូវបានគេបណ្តេញចេញពីដីនិងធ្វើឲ្យជីវភាពពួកគេកាន់តែដុនដាបនេះបើយោងតាមរបាយការណ៍ថ្មីមួយរបស់អង្គការក្រៅរដ្ឋាភិបាលមួយដែលធ្វើការលើការងារនេះគេហទំព័រដដែលនេះបានបង្ហាញឲ្យដឹងតាមរយៈរបាយការណ៍របស់អង្គការគោលនយោបាយដីធ្លីនិងអង្គការគំនិតផ្ដួចផ្ដើមនឹងធនធានបានរកឃើញថាគំរូនេះជារឿងធម្មតាក្នុងការធ្វើសម្បត្តិចំនួន73000នៅក្នុងប្រទេសចំនួន8ដែលគេបានសិក្សានិងបានរកឃើញថាជាង93%ពាក់ព័ន្ធនឹងដីដែលមានមនុស្សរស់នៅរបាយការណ៍នេះបន្តទៀតថាចំនួនរវាងក្រុមហ៊ុននិងសហគមន៍នៅក្នុងប្រទេសមួយនិងសម្រាប់គម្រោងមួយដែលចំណាយគិតជាមធ្យម$100 លានក្នុងមួយឆ្នាំលោក Andy Vai អ្នកសម្របសម្រួលសិទ្ធិនិងធនធានបានថ្លែងថាចំនួនទាំងអស់នេះនឹងហានិភ័យផ្នែកហិរញ្ញវត្ថុដែលគឺមកពីគ្មានការទទួលខុសត្រូវលោកស្រីឆៃកំហនអ្នកតំណាងឲ្យពលរដ្ឋនៅសហគមន៍បូរីកេឡាបានលើកឡើងថាប្រសិនបើក្រុមហ៊ុននិងមន្ត្រីរាជរដ្ឋាភិបាលគោរពនិងអនុវត្តកិច្ចព្រមព្រៀងដែលធ្វើជាមួយសហគមន៍នោះពលរដ្ឋយើងនឹងទទួលបានផលប្រយោជន៍ច្រើនពីគម្រោងនេះអ្នកស្រីកំហនបន្តថាគឺអាជ្ញាធរនិងក្រុមហ៊ុនទេដែលបានធ្វើឲ្យយើងមានការខកចិត្តកន្លងមកនេះនីតិរដ្ឋភាពធ្វើឲ្យប្រជាពលរដ្ឋខ្មែរធ្វើការចំណាក់ស្រុកទៅបរទេសដោយសារតែកង្វះនៃថវិកាសម្រាប់ជួយផ្គត់ផ្គង់នៃជីវភាពគ្រួសារនីតិរដ្ឋភាពធ្វើឲ្យកម្មការនីមានប្រាក់ខែមិនសមរម្យនីតិរដ្ឋភាពធ្វើឲ្យកម្មការនីគ្មានសិទ្ធិក្នុងការបញ្ចេញមតិគ្មានសិទ្ធិក្នុងការតវ៉ានីតិរដ្ឋភាពធ្វើឲ្យក្រុមហ៊ុនតាមបណ្ដារោងចក្រនៅកម្ពុជាគៀបសង្កត់នៅកម្មការនីនៅស្រុកខ្មែរលោកបំបត្តិវប្បធម៌នីតិរដ្ឋភាពនៅកម្ពុជា
Cu cine ați putea lucra ca premier dacă ieșiți președinte? Dați-ne câteva nume de oameni, adică e imposibil să nu aveți în minte niște nume de oameni cu care ați vrea să lucrați.
Mai ales că nu sunt chiar atât de mulți calificați la postul de premier cu care ați putea lucra.
Adică un om cu principiu, un om care împărtășește programul și principiile mele.
Dați-ne câteva nume.
Numele de vis, numele pe care l-aș dori să numești este Daniel Morar.
Ca premier.
Dacă mă întrebați ce aș vrea. Acum, dacă mă întrebați dacă am vorbit cu Daniel Morar, răspunsul este nu. Dacă mă întrebați cu cine mi-aș dori.
Așa, deci nefiind foarte fezabilă varianta asta, vă întreb altă variantă din cele existente și fezabile.
Este prima oară când spun un nume.
Păi mai spuneți, unul, două dintre cei cu care ați putea lucra.
Nu, haideți să mergem în următorul scenariu. Intrați în turul 2, împreună cu Victor Ponta, să spunem. Victor Ponta va veni în dezbaterile televizate.
Hi, everybody. As David said, my name is Chris Babbitt. I'm Assistant Director of the Cyberlaw Clinic, which is based at the Berkman Center and here at HLS. And we are kind of a traditional legal law school clinic. Our students work on a wide range of issues involving technology, intellectual property, speech, privacy, youth online safety. We have a number of our clients in the room today, so I'm thrilled they're here, as well as some of our students, which is great. For those who follow news about the news, you know that today's topic of this first panel is just about as hot a topic as you can get. We're going to talk about a wide range of issues relating to news aggregation websites, about websites that compile and link to news stories that are found from third-party sources. The parties that engage in news aggregation really run the gamut, including everyone from pure sort of spam blogs or splogs that people would say, up to sort of citizen journalists covering hyper-local issues and bringing in third-party content to supplement their own content, all the way up to major news organizations. And I think our panelists today represent this sort of diverse range of views and the types of parties that are involved in these kinds of activities. We're going to talk, like I said, about the sort of two major legal doctrines, I think, that are involved in this. One is copyright and one is the doctrine of hot news misappropriation, as well as some of the business issues that relate to this. So I'll give a really quick introduction to our 5 panelists who are crammed in at a very small table. And I think after I give them a short introduction, ask each of them down the line and talk for a couple minutes just about themselves and their practice and sort of how they come at the kinds of issues we're talking about today. On my left is Mike Greigel, who's a partner at Hiscock & Barclay, and he's chair of the firm's Media and First Amendment Law practice. He also currently serves as chair of the New York State Bar Association's Committee on Media Law. His practice covers First Amendment issues, defamation, advertising, copyright, reporters, subpoena matters, and his clients include Clear Channel Communications, Bloomberg, Condé Nast, and Gatehouse Media, whom Mike represented in a case that I think a lot of people in the room were probably following when it was filed at the end of 2008 against the New York Times relating to the Boston Globe's use of headlines and leads from stories found on Gatehouse's Wicked Local series of blogs. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Right after Mike, we have Sam Byard. Sam's a fellow at the Berkman Center, and he's assistant director, works with David at the Citizen Media Law Project. Sam's also a lecturer on law and the LLM program here at Harvard Law School. If you are familiar with the Citizen Media Law Project website, you know that they have a fantastic blog, and Sam's a frequent blogger on media law and intellectual property issues of importance to non-traditional journalists and others. Sam was an associate at Wachtell Lipton and clerk for Judge Kaplan in the Southern District of New York. Thanks for joining us, Sam. After Sam, we have David Haas. David's a partner in Goodwin Proctor's litigation department here in Boston and a member of its intellectual property group. David's practice focuses on trademark, trade secret, copyright, false advertising, and licensing disputes. And David represented the New York Times Company in the aforementioned case brought by Gatehouse at the end of 2008. David, thanks for joining us. After David, we have Bruce Brown. Bruce came and joined us on about, I guess, 40 hours notice, roughly, from D.C. He's a partner at Baker & Hostetler, and we're thrilled that he was able to make the trip. Bruce's practice covers the areas of libel and invasion of privacy defense, copyright, law of news gathering. He has a long journalism background in addition to his legal career. He's been co-chair of the Legislative Affairs Committee of the MLRC in New York, and he's currently an adjunct faculty member at Georgetown's Master's Program in Professional Studies in Journalism. Along with some of his colleagues, including Bruce Stanford, Bruce has published a number of pieces about news aggregation and related issues, including an op-ed that appeared in the Washington Post last May entitled Laws That Could Save Journalism. And thanks again, Bruce, for coming, especially on such short notice. And finally, Joseph Liu is a professor at Boston College Law School. Joseph writes and teaches in the areas of copyright, trademark, and internet law. He's a co-author of the Copyright Law Essential Cases and Materials textbook published by West. And the particular focus of Professor Liu's work is how digital technology is changing the ways in which consumers interact with copyrighted works, which I think is at the heart of a lot of what we're going to talk about today. As I said, it's my goal to probably do as little talking as possible today, so I wonder if maybe each of you could start with a short statement about yourselves and what brings you here. Thanks so much. Mike, if you want to start.
Thank you, Chris, and I too would like to join in thanking Chris Babbitt, Jennifer Isbell, David Ardia, and the others at the Berkman Center for organizing this event today. It certainly is going to present some cutting-edge and very interesting, fast developing legal issues. As Chris indicated, I chair the First Amendment in media law practice in my firm. These days that means I spend an awful lot of time on airplanes. I'd like to think, much to my wife's dismay, although I'm sometimes not certain. We do a lot of work in what I call traditional, older media types of claims, defamation, although those certainly can affect internet publications as well, invasion of privacy, and other news gathering and news publication related claims. I would like to say that as somebody who has spent his entire professional career and been privileged to do so, representing the media and the working press, I have always viewed the fair use doctrine as not some grudgingly tolerated exception, but a fundamental policy of the copyright law that is intended, and often does, stimulate creative thought and authorship for the greater good and benefit of society. Simply because I have taken the pro-right holder view in a couple high-profile litigations, I will say for this group that my view has not changed in that regard. I'm sure we'll anticipate the substantive discussion a little bit, but and see if that can be squared up going forward. The last thing I should add by way of humor is when I told my children that this was going to be on a webcast, I was walking out the door, they said, well, Dad, please do us a favor, just don't say anything really foolish. Unfortunately, I could not provide them that reassurance. So, I'm very pleased to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Hi, I'm Sam Byard, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Citizen Media Law Project. So I'm sort of the in-house guy from the CMLP today. And our sort of background on this and approach to it has been a concern for sort of the non-mainstream media journalist, the non-traditional journalist, the blogger, the social media user, and we've been very interested in this topic of news aggregation for a number of years, probably going back before the Gatehouse case, but obviously our interest was spurred in that at that point to sort of really engage with it, and I think our orientation to the issue is that on the copyright issue, on the fair use issue, we want to emphasize, I think, that that there are lots of different types of activities that are referred to under the label of news aggregation, and that depending on what activities we're talking about, the fair use analysis certainly should come out differently, and that most of the more productive aggregation practices should, under present law, enjoy the protection of fair use. Hot news is something we've become very, very interested in recently, and in particular, the interest in what impact the hot news doctrine, if expanded and revived and applied to the online, sort of the open internet that we enjoy today in the United States, what impact the hot news doctrine might have on that sort of vibrant conversation that's going on, and what the First Amendment implications are for that expansion. And that's my take. We'll talk more.
That's great. David?
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you to those of you who are online. And thank you for the center for putting this together. This really is a lot of fun, and I've been looking forward to this for a while now. In some ways, I think I may approach these issues a little bit differently than some of the other panelists, and probably from some of the other folks in the room. I come to these issues not in a sense from a media or an industry perspective. I really have spent my life as an intellectual property lawyer. I, as a result, have been dragged into many, many different media disputes, and including the New York Times case, and I also represented Cablevision at the trial level in the RSDVR case that they had against most of the media industry a number of years back, that ultimately was decided the right way in the Second Circuit. And so I really sort of do come at these issues from a very traditional intellectual property bent, and that's where my analysis tends to start. Obviously, that analysis can be seen through the prism of various different clients that I've had, and many of them are in the media industry, including the New York Times and Cablevision, and some very interesting clients who have been involved in publishing, and both as authors and as publishers. I represented Hamid Karzai at one point when he got into an odd issue over a book deal. I also, in a sense, come to this from a slightly different angle, in the sense that when it comes to watching the media world change and content provision change, I have a vested interest in it. My day job is as a lawyer. I'm also a novelist, and I've had 4 novels published around the world in 9 different languages, and watching the industry change and trying to figure out how content is going to be protected and encouraged is not just a professional interest to me, but a personal interest. The latest book, by the way, is called Among Thieves, came out about a month and a half ago. Got great reviews. If you guys like thrillers, please, I need the money, so go on, buy it.
Bruce?
Great. Well, I guess I've been looking forward to this for about 36 hours. But it's great to be here, and it's great to be a sub because clearly I can take a pass on the tough questions because I didn't have a chance to do any of the homework. Just to get my biases out on the table, I worked in print media before I went to law school. I worked for David Broder at the Washington Post for a couple of years, and then did some stringing for The Economist when I was in law school, and then after law school, I worked at American Lawyer Media at Legal Times down in Washington, where I wrote about the federal courts. So I have a print media background that's going to give me a bias. My clients are in print media. That's going to give me a bias. I'm not on Facebook. I don't have a Gmail account. I've never been on Twitter. My poet is still Yeats. My band is still the Beatles. I am clearly of the old century. But saying all that, I love the internet, but I love journalism. And so one of the things that I've been working on over the last couple of years is trying to do some writing about what we can do in the way of public policy to help journalism survive the transition to the online world. And when it comes to hot news, my colleague Bruce Stanford and I, as Chris mentioned, did a piece last year where we looked at some of the different things that Congress might be able to do to give journalism a boost online. And we felt that there had been a lot of attention in the 90s to what tech needed in the way of public policy. It got the Communications Decency Act, it got the DMCA, and now it was time to give some thought about what could be done for journalism. And when it comes to hot news, we would like to see an expansion of the hot news doctrine. It is a doctrine that exists in just a handful of states now, and we are in favor of federalizing it. But at the same time, we believe it is a doctrine that should be used sparingly, and for only those situations where there truly is a systemic free riding on the hard work that journalists do to put out the knowledge we all need on the internet. And that we believe that we can federalize hot news, make it available nationwide and not just in the handful of states where it currently exists today, and that we believe as First Amendment lawyers would be consistent with keeping the internet the vibrant speech community that we all very much want it to be. Thanks for being here.
Joseph?
So, so I'm Joe Liu. I'm a professor at Boston College Law School. And I want to offer my thanks, too, to the Center for putting together this terrific panel. I think it's a really fascinating topic. I also want to congratulate the Center on launching the initiative. I think it's a great idea, and I wish you the best of success with it. My main area of focus and research is copyright law. And in particular, I study how rapid changes in digital technology are changing the way in which consumers interact with copyrighted works in terms of getting even more access to them, being able to manipulate them, send them to other people, transform them, and all the rest. And in particular, how existing laws, facilitate or hinder these kinds of efforts. Now, I think this is relevant to the topic for today because I think it's pretty dramatic, the changing nature of the patterns in which consumers consume news. I'm actually old enough to remember the days when you had to wait for the afternoon edition of the newspaper or the evening broadcast to find out what happened during the day. Things are incredibly different today. The amount of information that's available, the immediacy, the number of sources that it's coming from. And so a lot of the same questions that I look at applied to other industries are relevant here. So a lot of the same questions about what role should intellectual property law play, copyright, hot news misappropriation, to what extent will it facilitate changing patterns of interacting with the news, producing the news, and all the rest. As an aside, I was talking to Bruce earlier, I think it's really interesting that as a copyright scholar, so much attention has been focused on the impact on the recording industry, the movie industry, how are these industries going to survive, and at least for copyright scholars, the impact on the newspaper industry kind of snuck up on us. So we were kind of looking in one direction, and all of a sudden, there's a crisis in the news. And so I think it's interesting applying a lot of the same issues to this kind of problem. And so, my approach, and I guess my interest in this issue will be as, I guess, kind of the designated pointy-headed academic on the panel. And so from that perspective, I think, a lot of the other folks on the panel will, I think, have a lot of great things to say about the real-world impact of a lot of these rules, how it affects the parties and all the rest. I guess my contribution, to the extent that I have one, will be to try, kind of offer a little bit more of a broader perspective, a little bit more of a historical perspective. And on that front, let me just kind of throw two things out here.